Chapter 17. While we'd been talking, we came across an undamaged crate that looked promising. All that stood between us, and it was one of my fireball throwing buddies. This one never got a chance to warm up. Arlene whirled and blasted him. The demon went down without a chance to hawk and spit. The label on the crate promised medikits and comrades. We opened it and found a full pantry. Arlene insisted on playing nurse before I played chef. She examined my shoulder. The bullet had gone straight through. Score 1 for my side. She injected universal antiviral, antibiotic, and wrapped a bandage around my shoulder, while I gritted my teeth and groaned like a big baby. When she finished with my arm, I heaved a sigh of relief. God, I hate medical crap, but I was premature. I'd forgotten about my burns. Arlene didn't forget. The cream she applied on my forehead, cheeks, and chin hurt worse than the arm injections. It hurt so bad that I started hunting for any serious cuts or burns Arlene might have, something that would require my delicate attention and lots of cream. Despite her appearance, she was disgustingly healthy. Now it was her turn to tell a story. Fly, she began, pausing to gulp water from a bottle we'd extracted from the crate. I don't want to see anything like that first assault ever again. She sat with her back to a wall, and I stood where I had a good view of anything coming or going. I had to find out what happened to Fox Company. Munching on a bland, fast energy bar that tasted as fine as a steak at that moment, I gave her my undivided attention, and a chocolate bar of her own. The situation had been as bad as I imagined. The assault simply fell apart. Seeing the zombies was enough. The guys didn't even need flaming snot demons to drive them off the deep end. Walking, staring, drooling, rotting human corpses proved sufficient to make them forget every combat lesson they'd ever learned. They went crazy. They broke ranks and charged the zombies. Fox was full of fighting spirit. All right, it just sacked a plan, strategy and tactics, a command structure, and a snowball's chance, and they should have known where as soon as they let themselves get isolated, cut off from each other. The fire-hawking spinies picked them off one at a time. I couldn't really blame my buds. I'd had the same reaction, the same rage to rip the zombies apart with my bare hands. Arlene was saved because she wasn't as affected by the male berserker fury. It must be a male thing, testosterone, maybe. Jesus, did that sour lemon odor actually stimulate a testosterone and adrenal rush overdose? Then again, she might simply have had better self-control than a guy. I interrupted to say, "You're a better man than I am, Arlene." Quote, "Shush, Fly, if you want to hear the rest of this." I shushed. "I found a cupboard and hid out," she continued. I could hear them moving just beyond the door. Sometimes hearing is worse than seeing. I nodded at the truth of that observation. "Like this ugly demon," I said, kicking the brown hide of the creature she'd dispatched. "They hiss like giant serpents. Scares the piss out of you in the dark." She laughed. "I wouldn't call that a demon. I've seen some others that more deserve the name." "Yeah," I agreed, remembering the minotaurs. "I guess those hell princes you warned me about with your skull and crossbones are a more traditional demon design." "I wouldn't know," she said. "I never saw them." "You're talking about the pentagram room. You didn't see them." I put one foot into that room and heard one of them scream. "I guess it saw me. But I didn't stick around to see it." "What do they look like?" 8 feet tall, bright flaming red, with goat legs and huge horns. "They fire some sort of electrical ball lightning from wrist launchers." She shook her head. "Nasty. But the thing I call a demon is a huge bloated pink thing with tusks. Maybe we should call it a pinky. Does your pink demon make a pig sound?" The way she shuddered answered the question before she nodded. She wasn't kidding about what you hear being worse than what you see. I didn't press her for further details. I had a sinking feeling that no description was necessary. Before this was over, I imagined we'd be seeing lots worse nightmares, a full menagerie from the lowest pits of hell. "So what happened after you left me the warning?" Quote, she smiled, happy to oblige. "I ran like the devil." She interrupted herself, uncomfortable with the expression. The way things were going, there was no telling who we might meet next. "I ran," she said, "and found the crack. I had enough paint stick left for a final warning. I want you to know, Fly Taggart, that Taking the time for that do not enter sign was the stupidest thing I did all day. While I was making like a public information booth, one of those hell princes, as you call them, came tromping down the hall. "You've got guts," I piped in, and didn't care if she shushed me this time. Instead, she insisted on my going back into the narrative and giving all the gory details of how close I'd come to cashing in when facing these monsters. Then she resumed, "While I was writing as fast as I could, I studied that crack in the wall, wishing I could make it larger. I couldn't squeeze through. I know, I felt like dog dirt. But what could I do? I didn't have a jaws with me, and no time to crank the crack wider even if I did have. I wormed my way through, leaving a few layers of skin behind, and hoofed it for the gate." Quote, "She stopped to catch her breath. 'You must have been surprised when you came through stripped bare,' I said. She sighed. I was surprised to still be alive, which is how I've felt every leg of this mission. There was a corpse reception committee waiting at the other end, but at least they weren't zombies. While I picked my way through all those bodies, a metric ton of zombies started teleporting in. There were too many of them to handle, so I dived into that secret cupboard you found, and somebody pressed a switch, and the freaking door slammed shut. And then you showed up, looking," she struggled for words, "not a hell of a lot better than the zombies. Fly." "Thanks," I said. She always had a knack for compliments. Sometimes I suspected she liked toying with me. I pointed at the brown carcass of a spiny. "So if you don't want me calling it a demon," I said, "how about a spiny? How about an imp?" "An imp. Why not? I had a book of fairy tales when I was a kid with goblins and things." The picture closest to this critter had the caption, "Imp." It was playing with magical fire. Our game was becoming fun. We didn't have a lot of entertainment at the moment. "I dunno," I said. "Something about the head reminds me of an old monster movie about a fish guy who lived in a lagoon." "He's an imp," she insisted, reminding me that tough marine or not, she was still a woman. My mother didn't raise any fools. "He's an imp," I agreed. "We should name the others too," she said, encouraged. "We've got zombies, imps, demons or pinkies, and hell princes. What do we call the rest?" Quote, I laughed. "That's pretty biblical, isn't it?" She stared blankly. Not everyone had enjoyed the benefits of religious schooling. "Anyway, it's a great idea, Arlene. If we ever find a functional radio, we'll need to report to someone. We might as well play Adam and Eve and name all the beasts." She relaxed, convinced now that I wasn't making fun of her, so I continued. "One of these imps talked to me," I started, but Arlene cut me off. "Talked." This was the most surprised I'd seen her yet. We hadn't exactly duplicated each other's adventures. He tried to get me to surrender, promising if I did, I wouldn't be reworked. Zombified. But the son of a bitch was such a liar, I wouldn't trust him for the time with a clock stuck to his face. The way she laughed made me laugh. Finding her had changed everything. I wanted to live now as well as fight, report back to Mars or to Earth, do my duty for the survival of Homo sap, the home team. "Are those all the monsters we've discovered so far?" she asked. "No," I admitted. "There's something around here that's partly invisible." I was thinking of them as killer ghosts. "Specters," she corrected offhand. "If we got out of this alive, I would recommend Arlene for the job of an editor on a religious magazine." I had a sense of justice. "I haven't run into them yet," she added. "And some flying skulls. What should we call those?" "Flying skulls." Quote, "Right. What do you want to call them?" "Flying skulls, you lame brain. Call 'em as you see 'em." I found out she hadn't run into any of the mysterious blue spheres, either, so far the only good thing to come out of the gate. I had the feeling that before this was over, there would be much more of the naming of names. Now it was back to business. Lunchtime was over. It was a brief rest, we needed real sleep. We needed to find somewhere secure so that we could take turns sleeping and watch standing. And we needed real food. "Something feels weird about this place," she said. Something about Dimos was creepier than Phobos. The place was colder, but that wasn't it. The odors were about the same, but a bad taste seemed to go with it. Maybe we were closer to the source of the sour lemon stench that hung around the zombies. Whatever it was, a cloying odor underrode everything, something very slowly rotting. I hate looking at it, I answered her. If lesser demons were in charge of the other Martian moon, then old Nick himself had drawn the blueprint here. The skulls were starting to get on my nerves. They were everywhere, all different sizes and shapes, always more evil than a normal human skull. As we explored, the color we noticed most was red, darkening into the shade of rare steak. The little voice wanted to know why it wasn't getting hotter. Red was hot. Hell was supposed to be hot. The floor became moist with the hated ooze, not yet deep enough to require slogging through a river of the stuff. I wondered if Arlene and I were exploring the great intestine of something so gigantic that I was going to have a hard time ripping out its guts. It seemed like the deeper we went into hell, the closer we got to the life force. Screw that. The Martian moons were more appealing as desolate rocks exposed to the cold of space. Bad news, said Arlene, pointing at a teleport platform at the end of a corridor. We had no choice, use it or go back. Along with all the normal maps I wanted, I now wished for a map showing where all these grids connected up. How many shopping days before Christmas? Somebody's got to do it, Arlene. Quote, do what? Recon these teleport things. She placed a firm hand on my shoulder. Nice of you to volunteer, Corporal. Rank before beauty. Pearls before swine. I was about to delegate, PFC. I looked around. The layout's different here than on Phobos. Looking back, I observed the vista of emptiness we had walked through to get to this point. I had the feeling that the walls were squirming when I didn't look at them. More dead ends. I don't like jumping into a fire when I'm getting fat and happy in the frying pan. But we're humanity's vanguard, right? It sounded sarcastic, but I didn't mean it to be. We've got to find out what's happened and communicate with someone up the chain. Whenever Arlene smiled, it felt warmer, nicer, than when we'd just been palling around. War brings out something good in a certain kind of person. I didn't know about me, but I was sure about Arlene. Besides, she elaborated, best way to stay alive is to be on the offense. I'm coming right behind you. There was no one I'd rather have backing me up. Give me 30 seconds. They wouldn't be my famous last words, I hoped. The teleporter sensation, now that I was ready for it, was similar to the gate. But quicker, less disorienting. My clothes stayed on and the weapons didn't disappear. I was ready to secure the beachhead. I'd arrived on a platform virtually identical to the one at point of departure. I should have jumped off right away, but I was distracted by the sound of heavy pile drivers coming closer and closer. Jesus and Mary, I realized, their footsteps.